culturally relevant show of all time for 10 years was Game of Thrones. The ending is bad and nobody talks about it anymore.
Yeah, but it was so bad.
No, I still think a ton of people talk about Game of Thrones.
Yeah, but they talk about how
not.
bad the ending
Absolutely
was. You
not.
can't talk about Game of Thrones without someone being
People
like...
do not talk about Game of Thrones the way they did for 10 years because of that ending.
And
no question.
if they ever do talk about it, they're like, okay, we're talking about the first 8 seasons, not the last 1 or 2 or whatever it is.
Dude, everything.
They have to put that asterisk in there.
Everything in pop culture was Game of Thrones. Everybody was trying to rip off Game of Thrones. Everything was Game of Thrones. And House of Dragon just came out, and I heard from people that watched it that it was great.
It was good.
It was not the event that Game of Thrones was.
I mean, yeah.
Well, the story has to build up.
Irreparable damage.
You know, Game of Thrones didn't have that steam.
Irreparable damage.
But Game of Thrones didn't have that steam at season 1. You know, House of the Dragon. Most Game of Thrones fans, you know, the argument can be made that House of the Dragon season 1 is just as good, if not better, than Game of Thrones season 1.
I think it probably is.
Look,
I'm not saying
come season 4 or 3, where things really start heating up, it will be that event.
We'll see.
That Game of Thrones once was, but again, that show, I think that's the biggest show of all time. Like, dude, it had like,
I mean, yeah.
I had parties at my house every Sunday. Also,
And you were sad at the end.